Today, we're not just talking about a political slogan. No, we're putting it on trial. We are conducting a full-blown financial audit of America First to see if the numbers actually back up the rhetoric. They told us America First was all about protecting your job, your factory, and your wallet. And you know what? It was a great slogan, really powerful stuff. But as finance people, we don't really care about slogans. We look at the balance sheet, because that's where the truth always comes out. So today, we're auditing the last 8 years of U.S. economic policy. And I want to be clear, this isn't about red versus blue. It's not ideology versus ideology. This is profit versus loss. And when you look at the raw numbers, well, the United States didn't just fail the test. It may have actually bankrupted the entire school. $38 trillion. Just look at that number. That's at the absolute heart of our audit today. It's a figure so massive, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. But don't worry, we're going to break it down and show you exactly what it means for the country's financial health. All right, so how on earth did we get to that $38 trillion number? Well, our first grade on this report card is going to tackle the national debt. We're calling this one the credit card test, because really it's all about how much you've been borrowing. Okay, so a huge piece of this whole economic policy was the big 2017 tax cut package. The claim, the big promise, was that these cuts would juice the economy so much that they'd basically pay for themselves through all the new growth and tax money. So, did they? Let's look at the evidence. Take a good look at this chart. It's pretty stark, and it's not just how high that second bar is that should get your attention, it's the sheer speed at which we got there. The national debt essentially doubled in less than a decade. I mean, the growth didn't just continue, it accelerated like a rocket ship after those tax cuts, which is the exact opposite of what we were told would happen. And this right here tells you exactly why that debt went parabolic. The data is just crystal clear. The tax cuts absolutely did not pay for themselves. Nope. Instead, they slapped over $1 trillion onto the national deficit. And the really crucial part? This borrowed cash didn't fuel some big boom in productivity or new factories. It just financed more spending. Let's be very direct. This isn't wealth creation. This is leverage. It's like feeling rich because you just maxed out 3 credit cards. It feels great for a little while, but sooner or later, that bill always comes due. Okay, let's move on to our second grade, the trade war. We're calling this one the shell game, and you're about to see why. Now, the promise on trade, it was simple and it was powerful. Tariffs are going to punish our rivals, they're going to bring factories flooding back to America, and we're finally going to get rid of that trade deficit. This was a core, central pillar of the entire strategy. But let's check the scoreboard, shall we? The total trade deficit didn't shrink. In fact, it hit new record highs. And yeah, while the deficit with China did go down a little bit, as you can see, the deficits with Mexico and especially Vietnam just exploded. The problem didn't go away, it just packed its bags and moved to a new address. And this is the whole game right here. This wasn't American manufacturing coming home, not at all. This was just tariff avoidance. Our sources show that Chinese companies simply opened up new factories in places like Mexico and Vietnam so they could get around the tariffs and keep shipping their stuff to the US. It was a classic shell game, plain and simple. And that little shell game had some very real consequences for everyday Americans. Research shows it was US families, not other countries, that ended up paying for those tariffs, costing the average household about $1,700 a year. Our supply chains got more complicated, not safer, and in a really wild twist, an unexpected winner popped up. As companies like Apple looked to move some manufacturing out of China, they invested heavily in India. So now India is having a huge manufacturing boom. In a very strange way, America First actually helped fuel India's economic rise. And all of that brings us to our final and maybe the most critical subject of all, global trust. This is what we're calling the lone wolf test. Okay, here's the most dangerous grade on the entire report card. And it's not about money. It's about trust. And once you lose this, you can't buy it back. There's no price tag on it. So here's the chain reaction our sources lay out. It started with step 1, the US began to use tariffs, sanctions, and the dollar system itself as economic weapons. Well, that led directly to step 2. Our own allies, feeling like they couldn't count on the US anymore, started seeking what they call strategic autonomy. This created a huge opening for step 3. The BRICS group of countries saw a chance to build a parallel system and they expanded. And that brings us to where we are now, step 4. The move away from the US dollar in global trade, or de-dollarization, is speeding up, as countries are now actively looking for ways to get around a system they see as a risk.
The bottom line is this. America First didn't create obedience. It created alternatives.
So, here we are, the final report card. For marketing, A+. You can't deny it. It was an absolutely brilliant slogan. But when you audit the balance sheet, the results are, well, they're abysmal. Economics gets a D-. And for debt management, trade outcomes, and global trust, straight Fs across the board. So if we tally up the score, did it work? As a slogan? Oh yeah, it worked. But as an economic strategy? No, it failed. The bill is coming due. And the real question isn't whether it worked. The real question is how you protect your own wealth when the teacher finally comes to collect. And if you want to understand what could happen when that massive debt pile starts to unravel, you should watch our next explainer on the zombie debt time bomb. Listen, if you value analysis over noise and you prefer systems over slogans, do us a favor and subscribe to Voice on Pages. And if you want to support independent research just like this, the Buy Me a Coffee link is right there in the description. Thanks so much for watching.